It's time for something spooky. Or at least as spooky as it can be. Livestream Escape from Hotel Izanami is exactly about that. Live streaming. In this case, it's about three young women, Ikuma Mio, Sakurai Nana and Shiraishi Azusa, who, on Nana's request, travel to Hotel Izanami to do a stream video. Ah yes, what people will not do for attention. And as it is typical in Japanese horror, these kind of abandoned places are creepy, have a very dark story behind them, and entering would make you regret you've ever lived in the first place. But you still do it anyway, because the live streaming itself is more important than your own lives. I mean, lives are worthless compared to streaming, right? So you get there and you control Ikuma Mio that lost sight of Sakurai and Shiraishi. Not long after, you wake up the enemy in that hotel, which is supposedly to be a mascot of a nearby amusement park that, just like the hotel itself, was abandoned. Along the way though, Ikuma finds Shiraishi and together they finally find Sakurai. Now all three are trying to find a way out, but it won't be as simple as they thought it would be. Look, I'm trying not to spoil the game too much because considering the nature and even length of this game, some spoilers will be unavoidable, so keep that in mind. I've mentioned length of the game, right? That's because Livestream is not a long game at all. You can beat it in about 6 hours or so with all 5 endings, 4 of which are bad endings. Well, I would argue that in a way, while the last ending is a good one for the girls, as a whole it is not. But play it for yourself to see what I'm talking about and if you agree or disagree. Since the game was developed by Qureate, yes, I have already covered a few games from them like The Future You've Been Dreaming Of and Made of the Dead. Of course, Livestream would live off of fanservice. But here it's a bit mild fanservice because, well, it doesn't need to be more than that. And while I always like seeing some panties and jiggle titties, I don't think this horror game really needed it. But oh well, I will live. And I'm happy to see the best girl in here, for me it's Shiraishi, showing some of her, let's call them, goods, so it's cool. During these scenes you have to save the girls from getting killed, and to do that you have to trigger something in the background, and if you can't, then the girl will die. In fact, you will even lose the game. And no, these don't count as bad endings, so be warned. Walking around is a bit ragdollish, but that's fine. Since you have to go from room to room to find certain items and be able to move on, or not trigger any of the bad endings, you will have to walk quite a lot between the 3 floors, then the basement, and finally outside. But sometimes I questioned a bit of the logic in the game, because look at this part. Sakurai found the hat that supposedly belonged to her friend, and she needs a long item to get it back. And that's fine up until that point. But across all floors there are long items everywhere and she doesn't pick any of these up. Instead you have to pick a specific item to get that hat back for some reason. There are a few other examples like these as well, for example regarding Sakurai's friend that never appears on screen, but well, it's a horror game with major supernatural elements, even though it does not start like that, so yeah, whatever. Puzzles will also be the norm and most of them are pretty easy to figure out. Actually, all of them are easy to figure out, which is quite of a shame because the difficulty could have been increased for sure. Throughout the game you will find journals and articles that explain the story of the hotel and the major victims involved. Some of those journals, though, just give you hints on how to solve the next puzzle. But again, even without these you can clear most puzzles. One thing the game does well at first is give you an enemy to escape from, the mascot. Yeah, you cannot fight nor even trap him. You can only run and hide. You hide either in the toilet or behind these pillars. However, in this aspect, there are a few things the game could have done better. Now, regarding the mascot, you will hear a sound cue, which is fine. That sound is him dragging his massive butcher knife around. But for some reason there is also a visual cue, because the light of your phone will flash 2 or 3 times when he is nearby. How is that possible? Sure, you can just turn the light off and that makes the game a bit harder, but still, why does the light flash? What kind of superpower does the phone have? And what kind of superpower do you have to be able to hide right in front of the mascot, but he still walks past you? Is he blind? Also later there will be a scene where the mascot actually gets defeated. In a way. And from that point onwards, which happens around in the middle of the game or so, you will not get chased by anybody or anything until the end. This decision from the developers seemed weird to me, because now any kind of risk factor or you just trying to stay alive was completely removed. You won't have any reason to fear anything or try to stay alive, because the only obstacle you had throughout the game is now gone, and that kills the horror aspect, turning this horror game into a side-scroller in a dark setting. It would be fine if the mascot died, but only if it were near the end or even only at the end, but certainly not towards the middle of the game, without any new threat making its appearance. Maybe one other thing that felt really off was in certain scenes where the girls were just talking or discussing or whatever, and suddenly the music was all happy. I get what the intentions were, but it didn't need to be a thing. Those scenes and the fact that the characters talk a bit too much really took me out of the game. The game is quite fine for what it is, and my guess is the developers wanted to make a horror game but didn't want it to be too scary, I guess? At least that's my assumption, considering the fan service, out of nowhere happy music, and later half of the adventure. From that aspect, then the game works kinda well. For what it is, at least. However, I think that Livestream could have gone all out and be 100% horror with a permanent threat, maybe more and harder to solve puzzles, and maybe make a bit more sense overall. If you want to play a better game though, then just play Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story.